Welcome to the Self-Performance Strategies Podcast. Unlocking the secrets of self-performance so you can improve mentally, emotionally, and physically. The goal of this podcast is to help you create more freedom of time, money, and purpose. My name is Stephen, and I am your host. I believe there is always an easier way, and I am here to help you find it. Let's jump in to the SPS podcast. Welcome. Hello to episode 6 of the SPS podcast of the Self-Performance Strategies podcast. And in this week's episode, we're going to be talking about the shit zone. Yes, the shit zone. What is the shit zone? Well, I'm going to explain it first before I drop the quote that I usually put at the front of each podcast, because I think this idea needs explained before we get into it further. But basically, the shit zone is when you're doing one thing, but your mind is on another. Have you ever felt like that? I'm sure you have. Everybody has. But when you're in that zone in between two things, when you're thinking about one thing, when you're doing something else, you're with your family, but you're thinking about work, you're in that weird zone. You're in what I call the shit zone. And when you're in the shit zone, your work is shit, your mood is shit, your results are shit, your productivity is shit. And the best way to get out of that is obviously to start focusing on one thing. And that's what we're going to talk about in this episode. We're going to talk about how you get out of the shit zone. But first, let's frame this conversation with a quote. And for this quote, I've gone to one of the most famous Stevens or Steves on the planet, and that is Steve Jobs. He has a plethora of amazing quotes, but this one is great for this conversation and for getting out of the shit zone. Well, what is it? Well, Steve once said, focus does not mean saying yes, it means saying no. So if you want to get out of the shit zone, if you want to get out of this deep hole, this hole of overwhelm and stress and being pulled in two different directions or even 3 or 4 different directions, you need to start saying no to things. You need to start saying no to things mentally, and you need to start setting more intention, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But first, a personal story or personal experience about the shit zone in my own life. For as long as I can remember, in my 20s and in my 30s, I was always in the shit zone. And it might have been down to distraction. It might have been me trying to escape the boredom of being at work. But any day I was at work, I was thinking about my social life or my hobbies or thinking about something else. And then when I was at home, out partying or out doing things at home, I'd be thinking about, well, did I really work hard enough today? Oh, I've got a lot going on at work, I'd be in the shit zone. And it would continue like that for years in my life, years and years and years. But eventually, I got into personal development. One day I started to pick up leadership books and personal development books and success books. And within those books, there were a couple of key habits, pretty straightforward, the key cornerstone habits that we should all do: meditation and journaling. And what I found, especially with meditation, is that I started to realize how much of my days I was in the shit zone. How much of my days my mind was monkey mind. The monkey was running it. And it wasn't just one monkey. There were like 4 or 5 monkeys. I was being pulled in so many different directions. But the more that I meditated and the more that I journaled, I started to realize that when I was at work, I should be at work. When I was hanging out with my friends, I should be hanging out with my friends. When I'm doing my hobbies, I should be doing my hobbies. And it allowed me to really start to see that I was not spending a lot of time in the now. I was not spending enough time living in reality. I was living in this weird zone where I'd always be thinking about some desired future, or I'd be attaching myself to some negative past. And that's not a way to live. That's not a way to create success in your life. And I felt that pretty hard. But the longer that I journaled and meditated, the more that I was able to process myself in a much more efficient way. Starting to sound like a robot here, but yeah, you do start to actually gain control of the rudder of your mind, of the ship of your mind. Your hands on the rudder now, and you get to direct it in the direction that you want it to go. You get to be the CEO of your mind, and you get to, tell the crazy parts of your brain that, it's work time. I don't need to hear this right now. We're focusing on this. I was able to create more hours in my day that I was focusing on one thing. Now, am I perfect at it right now? Am I a Jedi Knight? Am I a Buddhist monk where I'm always in the zone? No, I'm not. But I do dive deep into at least 2 or 3 decent hours, if not more, of my day where I'm really dialed in and focused on one thing. What that did for me was huge. All of a sudden, I was pumping out work at higher levels or getting work done faster. I was able to really focus in on key activities within my jobs. I was able to really be in the now a couple of times a day within my corporate jobs. And I started getting these results. I started really producing results. And it's a key exercise and a key strategy that I now really teach my clients to do as well. It's really important to create that intention in your days. And at this point of the podcast, that's what I want to talk about. Now that I've explained the shit zone and I've given you a personal story, a little journey there of how I really was able to keenly observe that I was in this shit zone every single day, I want to share 3 really great strategies on top of meditating and journaling. These 3 strategies are going to really help you get out of the shit zone. They're going to really help you produce results, and they're going to really help you feel more clear in your days. Now, the first one is pretty big. It's a massive cornerstone for anything. And yes, you've probably heard this before, but a stat that I will tell you now, and I will probably tell you it again in many other podcasts, is 95% of people don't have their goals written down. And a further 3% of people who do have their goals written down, but 3% of the people who don't even look at them regularly. So only 2 to 1% of people on the planet regularly look at and adjust their goals during the year. That's crazy stats. So the first thing that's going to help you create more intention in your life, that's going to help you get out of the shit zone, is to have clear targets. You're in the shit zone daily because you don't know what to focus on. It's really that clear. What are your key pillars in your life? Business, family, relationships. What are those key pillars? What are the activities that are going to move your life forward? If I was to ask you right now, what's the highest dollar activity you have in your business or your life? Can you answer that? Can you really quickly, when I snap my fingers, boom, can you be like, yes, this is my high dollar activity? Most people can't. When you get clear, you get focused. It's that simple. I've seen this in my life. I've seen it in my client's life. I've seen thousands of examples of it in the world, and I'm sure you have as well. If you think about a professional athlete, you think about a team winning a championship, they are dialed in and focused on their targets, and they achieve those targets. So having those targets is a really big part of getting out of the shit zone daily. The second one, which is really important as well, is managing your bandwidth. And that basically means managing your to-do list, managing your tasks, managing what's open in your life. We all have way too many open loops. We're constantly opening new projects and activities on a daily basis, and a lot of them don't get shut, so they become like mental weights. Like our CPU, our computer tab in our head has got 400 open tabs, and we're wondering why we're slow all day. Yeah, because we're thinking about way too much stuff. You can only do a certain number of tasks daily. You can only have a certain number of projects on the go. When you overcommit, you overload your schedule. Pretty simple. And you end up being in the shit zone. So we need to reduce our workloads. We need to reduce that. There are projects that we can let go of. There's work we don't need to be doing. There's work that is taking us away ultimately from our big goals. We need to drop that. And also, if you've got a to-do list and it's got more than maybe 5 or 6 things on it for the next couple of days, you're using to-do lists wrong. To-do lists are terrible. To-do lists are there to help you get the 4 or 5 tasks that you need to get done in the next 24 or 48 hours. Maybe even have 10 or 15 on a to-do list for the week. But if you have 100 things on your to-do list and you have them vague, like write a book, oh my God, you're killing yourself. You're killing yourself. You're really creating the shit zone in your life by being vague on your to-do list and having a huge to-do list. So one extra piece of advice I'll give you is drop the to-do list. Throw them in the bin. Anyway, the third and final point that I want to share with you on this episode is setting intention. I know I've used this word a few times already, but you have to do things with intentionality. You have to stop going from fire to fire daily and having your attention stretched. Stop, step back, breathe, and then fully commit to the task at hand. If you're with your family, be with your family. If you're at work, be at work. If you're taking half an hour to relax, take half an hour to relax. Don't go on TikTok or Instagram or some other dopamine-fueled content platform that's going to just like make you more tired at the end of the day. Do the thing that you say you're doing. If you're resting, rest. If you're partying, party. If you're hanging with your family, be with your family. If you're working, working. Kind of repeating myself here, but be intentional. And you can make a little intention statement that when you go to do something, you can say to yourself, okay, for the next 30 minutes, I am fully committed to this. I'm going to put my phone in the drawer. I'm going to close off all other tabs on my computer, and I'm committing to 30 minutes of this. You could even start with 5 minutes. And the funny thing about starting with 5 minutes, once you get into the work, that 5 minutes turns into 30. It turns into an hour. But you need to set that intention. You need to have a little conversation with yourself. I know lots of people that spend their life in the shit zone, always letting their mind be in two places at once. You don't want to live like that. The people who do live like that, they wonder why they always feel tired, stressed, and stretched to the limit. We know why. Don't let that happen to you. Use these 3 strategies that I've just shared with you and spend more time zoned in on the thing that you're doing. Get out of the shit zone and start living in the productivity zone, in the abundance zone, in the fun zone, in the intention zone, in the family zone, in the happy time zone. Just be out of the shit zone and focus on the thing that you're doing. Thanks very much for joining me on this episode of the SPS podcast, of the Self-Performance Strategies podcast. As you know, my name is Stephen. I've been your host. You can hit me up on all my socials at Steve Timoney. That's on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. It's on LinkedIn as well, Stephen Timoney. You can hit me up there at STEVETIMONEY. Let me know what you think of the podcast. If you have any ideas that you want me to discuss, any struggles that you're having in your life, let me know and I will do an episode for you. And then you can also hit me up on my website, and I have my full name on my website. That's Stephen with a P-H-E-N. It's S-T-E-P-H-E-N. Timoney, Timoney.com. And you can see all my blog posts, all my podcasts, everything else that I offer with my coaching, all on that website. So please swing over there and say hi. Would love to have a conversation with you. But yeah, thanks very much for joining me for episode 6. We're killing it here. We're moving along. These episodes are coming out quite quickly, having a lot of fun doing this, and hopefully I will speak to you in the next one. Make it a good one.